Good morning and welcome to the Lawrence and Schiller Boot Camp webinar series. Today our topic is selling ideas to your team. We are coming to you from sunny and beautiful Sioux Falls, South Dakota this morning. It's a great fall day. Thank you for joining us. Some fire drills before we get started. For audio, you can dial in on the number on your screen on the right side. We'd love to have you ask some questions today, and we'll have a Q&A toward the end of the session. You could use the question field on the right. We're also recording our webinar this morning, and a copy will be emailed to you by Monday in case you need to step away during the session this morning. And we'll also have a recap of today's webinar on our blog, ls-unscripted.com, and that will be there next week. You can follow us a couple of ways today also. Again, we encourage you to send us some Q&A from the window to the right. You can also follow us on Twitter, hashtag #TheExtraMile. Today's topic is presenting ideas, selling those ideas, and I am your host today. I am Mark Glissendorf, the Vice President of Multimedia and Operations here at Lawrence and Schiller, and it's a great topic today. As we know from the statistics that we've seen over the years, when people are asked what their greatest fears are, the fear of public speaking continues to rate higher than the other top fears, which are things like darkness, spiders, and even death. And when you're selling, not only are you speaking in public, but in addition to that, you're trying to persuade. So it can be a very intimidating experience, but we're going to give you some tips today, both in how you present your information and the technology that you use, some great tips for effectively doing that and giving you the confidence to overcome the fear and to do it successfully. And of course, our presenters will share with you not only some of the things that have worked very well for them, but I think they'll entertain us with some of their horror stories as well. One last quote before we get started. Doesn't seem like we can discuss this topic without the good old Mark Twain quote, which is, there are two types of speakers, those who are nervous and those who are liars. So with that, I will introduce our panelists today. First, we have Natalie Eisenberg, an account supervisor here at Lawrence and Schiller Advertising. Natalie is a graduate of the University of South Dakota with a bachelor's degree in Spanish and a master's in contemporary media and journalism. And also joining us is Carrie Burns, an associate account executive. Carrie is a graduate of Augustana College with a degree in business administration and emphasis on marketing and management. And Natalie's clients are in healthcare, retail, and higher education. And Carrie works primarily in the tourism and travel industry. We are going to start the festivities today with a poll question. We'll let you get involved right away. And again, these are some of the horror stories. Why don't you go ahead and vote and select one answer. What presentation scenario can you most relate to? Have you had the upper management, the person you're presenting to, simply just walk out of the room? Have you forgot your materials in the car or at the office and not realized that until you're in the room? Have you ever had a situation where the boss asks for the idea before it's fully developed? Or have you ever had the terrible experience of having your audience react to your ideas with nothing but blank stares? So we have about 70% of you have voted. I'll give you a couple of minutes to finish up, and then we will take a look and see which of those terrible fears you have most often experienced. We're going to close the poll, and I will share the results with you. And it looks like over half of you have been in a situation where the boss asks for the idea before it's fully developed. And the next, the 26% is the audience reacting with blank stares. And then the forgot the materials in the car or office, which is actually a 15%, a little higher than I would have expected. And somebody has actually had upper management walk out of the room.
Nice. Oh yeah, all of these answers Carrie and I came up with based on our real life experiences. So these have happened to both of us at least once. The meeting that comes to mind for me right offhand and thinking about my meeting horror stories. Remember the downtown meeting, Carrie?
Oh my goodness.
Carrie and I had a chance to pitch some new business to a new client downtown and in our community, and so we were all prepared. We were all jazzed and ready to share some brilliant ideas with them. Parked a block or so away, got ourselves into the 4th floor beautiful boardroom overlooking our community, and you know, we had the small talk, got the room and everyone settled. The vibe was there, and I realized that I had grabbed the wrong folder and had completely the wrong materials. So had to walk out of the room. Very awkward. Had to leave the room, head back down the 4 flights of stairs because I didn't want to wait for the elevator, and back out security, back to my car, back into the building, back upstairs, and probably a good 8 to 10 minutes later, after Carrie had been entertaining for that downtime, finally got the meeting started. We lost momentum, and overall it just was not our best day. So these things happen.
That's definitely the truth. So you could be like Natalie and I, where you're sitting in a meeting and you realize that the material in front of you is definitely not what you intended to bring, like you can see here with Don Draper. His expression on this slide so greatly portrays this situation. You could also be in a scenario in the poll question where things in the room just get heated. The discussions go awry, and the main decision maker or CEO even walks out of the room altogether. We've all been there too. And technology. Technology is either your friend or your foe. Here's the infamous scene from Office Space where they just unleash on that fax machine. We've all been there too, when your presentations just doesn't work with the AV system, or your projector just fails you completely. Or you could be like this poor little boy where you simply are ready to go and you just freeze. Stage fright 101. You just have no idea what to do next, and you lose all your train of thought completely.
Been there too. Not fun. And we know these situations are reality, and they'll happen from time to time, but today we want to focus on some idea selling tactics that will help you be in more control of the situation, help you engage your audience, and create understanding and ultimately acceptance of the ideas that you're presenting. Maybe Michael Scott should be tuning into this, or maybe he's too far gone, but I love him.
I love him too.
So whether you guys are presenting to management in a boardroom setting, or you're in a more informal internal meeting, sharing your ideas virtually or remotely, or even, which happens more often to me than not, in a hallway conversation, there are a lot of ways that we've found to be helpful in selling ideas.
So by now you're probably asking, okay, Carrie and Natalie, how do you guys do this all the time? So today we're going to be going through 3 tactics, as you can see here on the screen. The first of that being the thinking behind the idea. Where did it come from? How is it being fleshed out? And overall, why does it matter? Secondly is technology and delivery. What tools are out there right now, and what is best for each scenario? And then how to tailor each presentation based on each scenario, and then based on what individuals and personality types are in the room. Thirdly is that game day. Right when you're going into the room or situation to present, it can actually be a really nerve-wracking experience. So we're also going to walk through some tips to help alleviate this stress and make that game day and selling your idea a success.
All right, so let's get into section 1. Knowing and being able to share the thinking behind the ideas. The first thing that I always try and do, and that sometimes I think my team members think I'm a little bit repetitive for doing, but whatever scenario you're in, make sure that you remind the audience what the goal was. The first thing that comes out of your mouth should be something about what the objective is, and it should be in very tight, concise language, something that folks can remember, that they can latch on to. And so the first thing that really comes out of your mouth in an idea sharing presentation or conversation is something like, remember, our goal with this project was to improve user experience, perhaps if you're making a website. Or remember, our goal with this project was to increase enrollment by 10%, if we're talking perhaps in the world of higher education. Or another example, remember, our goal with this project was to introduce a new product in an unexpected way. So state that objective right up front and make clear that everything about that idea is aiming to reach that objective.
So as you move beyond the objective and into the actual sharing of the idea itself with your audience, be prepared with in-depth knowledge about why the idea is what it is. So in most cases, you're probably not going to come up with the idea or solution completely on your own. So make sure that you take that time up front to sit down and talk with everyone involved. Also remember that this could include your advertising agency like ourselves. So don't be afraid to ask a question as to why they came up with a point. Get into the heads of everyone who worked on the idea and understand why they did what they did. Ask them how they came up with point A, or overall what they were really trying to get across to the end user. So the main point with this slide is just to understand the rationale behind each element, because ultimately this could make or break selling your idea in.
It never fails, Carrie. Whenever I take the time to actually sit down with an artist or a creative on my team, or maybe a media strategist, somebody who helped me create the idea, I learn something from them, and I'm able to field those questions better in the actual presentation.
Absolutely, and you're that much more ready to sell the idea in.
You bet. So moving on to kind of on top of having that global understanding of the rationale and even some of the detailed understanding of the rationale for the project, we like to come to an agreement on that overarching theme or idea kind of early on in the process of development, so that it can be the guiding light of the project or kind of a thread throughout the development of an idea or project. And especially when presenting something that is a creative execution, having that theme or thread established early helps to progress the project along. So a few examples we see on the screen here. You may have seen the USG billboards around the state of South Dakota if you live here. And the thread that was common to this project was onward, and the theme onward was developed far earlier in the process than we actually started making billboards. We all decided as a working group that really represented everything we needed to communicate with this idea and this campaign. And so we got our stakeholders on board from the University of South Dakota partners that we have, and all agreed on our internal team that onward was really the thread that would carry us through this project. Another example of that, in which we also agreed upon early in the process, was Bend to Lewis lately for Lewis Strutting.
Here you can also see one of our freestanding inserts for tourism, and this is another instance of where implementing that campaign theme right up front was essential. We all agreed up front that this year was about making memories of a lifetime for our visitors to South Dakota. Each time an idea came up, we asked ourselves, does this idea sell to the fact that we're pushing places and memories of a lifetime, and ultimately is it getting to our goal of getting people to travel to South Dakota?
We were talking about target audience, and here on the screen we see a group of teenagers. It's important to get into the minds of your consumer, so talk to your consumer and really understand who they are, and bring those findings to the table. And as you're presenting your idea, then bring that information forward and actually show the faces of your target audience. Make sure that everyone in the room is clear that they or we may not be the target audience. So seeing the face of the audience is an important way to take some of that subjectivity out of the room and out of the conversation.
As you're mentioning end users, Natalie, that's a great point. Most of the time you're going to have different types of decision makers or individuals in a room. The visual that you see on the screen shows the basic differences between left-brained individuals and right-brained individuals.
To get your idea across successfully, you have to tailor your presentation based on personalities and preferences. For instance, when you're talking to CEOs, make sure that you send those talking points or highlights. Just know that you're going to have to get your point across fast to really sell that idea into the busy schedule of CEOs. For CMOs, they're really going to want to know how this connects to the overall strategy and ultimately why you think it will work. Then for those other audience individuals who need more detail, you're going to have to provide that. For CFOs or invested board members, they're going to want those numbers, charts and graphs, and ultimately what the estimated ROI is going to be from the idea. For project managers and other team members, they're invested in the day-to-day tactics, and they're going to be more concerned with the what, when, why, and how. So for them, giving them the most detail and the plan of action is going to be great.
All right, we're going to jump in here with another poll question. We'll pop it up here on your screen and you can answer for us. What presentation tool do you use the most? Do you use Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Prezi, Keynote, or another presentation software today? We'll wait for all your answers to come in here. They're flowing in. All right, let's see the results. Ooh, it looks like an overwhelming PowerPoint, which doesn't surprise me at all. Does it you, Carrie?
Not at all. Not surprised by that.
So now let's move into talking a little bit about building and delivering presentations and a few different types of technology that we could possibly use.
Like we saw from the poll,
clearly most of you guys out there are using PowerPoint. And the truth is that we use it a lot too. Actually, the presentation that we're going through today is built in PowerPoint. But we've also used a lot of other platforms like Prezi, which is the icon here in the middle, and then Apple's Keynote software in different scenarios depending on who the audience or how big the group is as well. And there are many differentiating factors between the options out there right now, so let's go through them. The ever so popular PowerPoint. What's great about PowerPoint is that you can work with others without having to wait. Co-authoring allows users to simultaneously edit the same presentation in different locations. For instance, I could be working on a presentation at my desk while Natalie could be editing the same presentation at a coffee shop. We would never have to sit down and go through each slide individually to make sure that all of our changes and updates had gotten made. The other great thing about PowerPoint is that it easily incorporates graphs, images, and videos very smoothly. PowerPoint also has a photo editing software installed that you can transform images at the touch of a finger. You can also edit video files directly in PowerPoint. For instance, if you have a 3-minute video and you only want to show 20 seconds of that, you can edit that video right in PowerPoint. The other great thing about PowerPoint is that it's easy and everybody's familiar with it. You can use it across PCs and on Macs. However, with PowerPoint, files can become large very fast. Inserting those videos and high-resolution images can make those files very large and ultimately really hard to use. And some people would say that PowerPoint is very overused, as we saw in our poll, and sometimes people even think that it's boring. So if you truly want to blow them away, you should use Prezi. With Prezi, you can create and present your ideas on a large canvas, almost like a whiteboard, instead of the traditional slides in PowerPoint. You can easily insert videos and images and arrange them in a natural flow to present your story or idea. With Prezi, your presentations can run from any browser as long as Adobe Flash is installed, so you can use it on essentially any device. Being that Prezi is fairly new, there are some challenges out there. The presentations are very difficult to print. A lot of the times we like to have the slides printed out in front of us or even have them as a handout in the end of the meeting. And with Prezi, this is next to impossible. Another great thing about PowerPoint is the templates. Right now, Prezi is working on creating templates, but it's ultimately hard to create customized ones. Here you can see that we have the orange boot in all of our slides, and to get your branding on each individual movement or transition in PowerPoint in Prezi is very hard to do. Lastly, Keynote is Apple's equivalent of PowerPoint. You can create professional and sleek presentations because the basic theme theme designs offered by Keynote are without a competition. They are minimalist and cool and have won many contests for their graphical appearances. Their graphics retain that elegance and minimalistic design that Apple is so widely known for. Keynote is also a more powerful application when it comes to multimedia friendliness. PowerPoint, you can insert media like photos, videos, sounds, but it's never going to be as smooth as when you're inserting those elements into Keynote. The other great thing about Keynote is that it easily converts to PowerPoint. For instance, if you're working with a team member who has a Mac and is building the presentation in Keynote, you can easily transfer it to PowerPoint for your PC. Another conversion wonder of Keynote is its ease of conversion to iPads, iPhones, or even podcasts. With a touch of your finger, your Keynote presentation can be quickly turned into a podcast and broadcasted on the iTunes Store. So now that we've talked about different examples, let's take a look. The slide on the screen right now is obviously a PowerPoint slide. We've all seen this before. It's the standard PowerPoint pie chart with the gray gradient background. The next slide is actually a full-on Prezi presentation. You can see that it's the white canvas with the ideas or points scattered throughout the presentation. You can then customize the transitions to move the audience throughout the presentation. Lastly on the screen is a Keynote slide. It's sleek, sexy, and easy to read, and is visibly a product of Apple's minimalistic and advanced thinking. Doesn't that look great? So no matter what platform you're using, we've learned throughout our presentation experiences between me and Natalie and the agency to keep our presentations very visual based.
And so something that's risen to the top of our what not to do in presentations list is the bullet pointed slide. Too often it's easy to put down everything that we're going to say in bullet pointed fashion, but it's real easy to either lose your audience or have your audience reading ahead. And so remember that the slide should not act as your notepad or your notes. It should really just be a visual backdrop for what you're actually going to say. And in a world that is so full of technological options, you should never forget that when you're presenting ideas, face-to-face is still the best way to do it. So having the ability to read that body language, see facial reactions, judge your audience's level of engagement. You know, as a CEO sitting over there looking at his watch, is he standing up, walking out of the room a lot? Are people tapping their feet? Are they actually focused in on you, the presenter? Having that ability to read those pieces is a big advantage.
That's funny that you mentioned that, Nat, because a recent stat that we found to support this knowledge is that people actually learn twice as much in face-to-face meetings versus those voice-only conversations. And on top of that, more than half of the impact from visual communications comes from those facial expressions and body languages that we all inherently portray.
All right, so even the science says that being face-to-face helps us be more productive and efficient, and I believe it. But if you're not able to get into the same room together, you can take advantage of technology to help you get face-to-face, and there's lots of options out there for that.
If you're using video or online conferencing, you will still get the benefits of seeing the body languages and visualizing facial reactions. Here you can see two of our staff members talking back and forth over a project. Mindy is on the left and Laura is on the right. Mindy actually works in our Deadwood office, and Laura works here at the agency in Sioux Falls. So to communicate with Mindy, we're on video conference with her a lot to bring her into those projects. It's kind of ironic that we're not on video today, but we do use it often in our day-to-day activities and also in selling ideas. So let's take a look at some of those video conferencing tools that are out there right now. The first being Skype. We're all familiar with it, and it's free. You can call webcam or no webcam from Skype user to Skype user for free. Aside from being cross-platformed, it's available on many mobile devices including BlackBerry, Android, and iPhone. The other great thing with Skype is its screen sharing abilities. Others can now see what you're doing on your computer, which makes it such a great feature for presentations or general information sharing. We've all been there before when you're trying to send a fairly large file through email and it just doesn't get through. But with Skype, it's absolutely perfect for this. You can easily just click the share option and pass files back and forth, no matter the size, as needed. Skype now also offers group video calls, so you can patch about 3 to 10 people in. However, for this feature, you do have to have a subscription. I think it starts about $9 a month. The system that we use most widely here at the agency is GoToMeeting's new HD Faces. That's the screenshot that you saw of Laura and Mindy on there as well. And with HD Faces, you have HD video conferencing included in all GoToMeeting subscriptions. So here, you can easily share any application on your computer in real time to up to 6 attendees. Whether this be working on an Excel document and making changes on the fly, or an animated creative piece that you're trying to sell into the viewers. They can see exactly what's going on your screen in real time. The other great thing about GoToMeeting is that it's just so easy to use. With a click of a button, you're in a meeting room with attendees that you invite. GoToMeeting is also integrated with Microsoft Outlook, so it makes scheduling and inviting those attendees that much easier. You can actually go online to their website. I'm not trying to plug them, but if you go to gotomeeting.com, there's a 30-day free trial, and they actually have great support to get you started. The other new option out there is FaceTime. In their own words, they say it's remarkable, it's fun, and it's not just for iPhone and iPod Touch anymore. Now, with FaceTime, you can make a call directly from your contact list, all in high def. Overall, it's nice because it's easy to use. You simply place a phone call, and with a touch of a button, by clicking that FaceTime icon, you're in a face-to-face conversation. It's not just for iPhone and iPod Touch, like they said, but you do have to use it within the Apple operating system, so this would be between Mac to Mac or iPhone to iPhone. And the one thing that does make FaceTime a little bit trickier and hard to use is that you do have to be connected to the internet or have a Wi-Fi connection.
Good stuff. So if you don't have the benefit of using the video conferencing technology or being face-to-face in an actual meeting or conversation, sometimes you have to use a conference call to present ideas. And so when you are presenting via conference call, a few things to keep in mind. When everybody is, when the conference call is being held from a room that has echoing or background noise and everybody's kind of speaking on top of one another, nobody is going to be heard. So choose a room that's quiet, a room that doesn't have a lot of echo. Make sure that people are sitting close enough to the phone and not far across the room so that there's that gap. Project your voice and speak slowly instead of rushing through the information and kind of talking quietly like you may if you were face-to-face. Make sure that you're projecting as best you can. Keep your comments kind of punchy and concise. And then also try and take pauses and give those opportunities for other people to speak and ask questions. And doing that will make conference calling a lot more smooth.
That's a great reminder, Natalie, because my team, working with a lot of partners in the western part of the state, we're on conference calls all the time. So going to email, while it's absolutely not the ideal way for you to present ideas, the reality is that email is still going to be a mode of delivery for you. The world we live in consists of many emails throughout the day and different communications, so make sure that your email is concise and that actionable steps are laid out. Just as we mentioned earlier, make sure that you have that rationale behind the idea written right into the body of your email, but just make sure that it's not too lengthy.
Please make sure it's not too lengthy.
Yes, that's a big pet peeve of both of ours. So after you hit that send button, also make sure that you follow up quickly with a phone call. This will ensure that the email was received, and then also you can ask the contact if they have any questions in regards to your rationale or in regards to the idea itself.
Okay, so if you actually have the opportunity and the luxury of presenting in a real face-to-face formal presentation setting, you're really already ahead because you don't always have this opportunity to have the big game day presentation. But there are a few things, if you do have this opportunity, that you can do to take advantage of it. The first being to rehearse. Just like any other performance or any other stage that you'd be on, you want to make sure that you run through the information a few times. And so take the team that's going to be presenting and do an actual rehearsal. Speak as if the audience is in the room. Run through the presentation, be really brutally honest with each other, and then make any tweaks and then run through it again. Make sure you get through it at least twice And as you go through that process, you may realize that some presenters are better than others, and don't feel like in those scenarios that you have to include every single person who came up with that idea in the presentation. At this point in the process, you need to really define who are the best presenters and let them deliver the ideas.
We did a lot of rehearsing for this webinar too, huh, Natalie?
We did, and hopefully it shows. So if you watch Mad Men, you see a lot on the show about, in those days advertising and idea sharing was more like a magic show. Things were developed and developed and developed and developed, and then it was like, ta-da, here's the big idea. And today it's different. Campaigns and ideas are often developed in shorter periods of time using more resources. Things like technology, manpower, vendors, materials, they all go into the building of ideas. So we want to make sure that we're not taking the strategy or the creative idea too far before checking in with the right people. Your goal should be to have those decision makers on board with kind of that overarching theme that we talked about earlier, or the general direction of that idea or solution, so that they're already bought in when that final work is revealed. It's not a big surprise moment anymore. Folks are kind of on the ride along the way and getting invested in the project along the way. Earlier on in my career, I used to spend hours and hours working on a plan or a proposal or an idea before showing it to anyone. I thought it would show well for me to put myself in a room, whether that be at the office or at home, and just jam on a project and take it almost to final completion. And I found that when I did that, and I finally did bring it back to somebody for feedback, more often than not, I would find that the direction should be slightly shifted, and it would create a lot of rework for me. And in those cases, there are wasted resources, wasted energy. It's best to just get people, get feedback along the way, and if you can, get in front of those decision makers for check-ins along the way so that they're already nodding their head when they're coming into the room and hearing that final idea.
Another great tactic for that game day is storytelling. You can see these two sweet little children reading a book to each other, but the truth is that storytelling is not only for kids. Engage your audience from the start with a story and return to it often. If it makes sense with your idea you're trying to get across, use it and weave it throughout the presentation. One story that we've used before is about a family in the Black Hills. We ran across them one day at Mount Rushmore, and we asked them how they were enjoying their trip and ultimately why they decided to travel to South Dakota. The dad brought up the fact that his kids had kept seeing that South Dakota tourism commercial on the TV, and all they could keep talking about was how they wanted to go see the faces. Take us to the faces. So for instance, if we were going into a presentation to present a new media strategy, we could easily point back to the story of the kids seeing the commercial at their house, laying on the floor, and seeing it on that television. You're probably not going to get a standing ovation for your story, but it will add an entertainment and reality factor into that presentation. On the screen here, you can see the 80-20 rule that we're all familiar with. 20% of what you say provides 80% of your message. So if every message is presented the same way, nothing will stand out and the important 20% may be lost. This important 20% is probably going to be your idea, so make sure that you change something up when you're trying to sell that. One thing that you can easily change is to vary your voice levels and style to keep things interesting or different, like the set of matches on the screen right now. When you're selling a new idea that you're really excited about, be active. Walk around the room with high energy. Bring your voice up and be a bit excited. Get that point across and say, hey team, we know that this campaign is going to be successful and we know that it's going to work. Then, on the flip side, when you're addressing challenges or problems, you're going to want to portray more empathy. Be more still. Have that lower energy. Maybe you're standing in the same place with your hands held in front of you, and you have a more quiet tone to your voice. For example, we all know that this year has been hard on our industry. Sales numbers are down. Walk-ins continue to decrease, etc., etc.
And when you ask people to focus on you, don't be afraid to just turn them away from the PowerPoint or the presentation, no matter what technology. Turn it off. Don't be afraid of that black screen. Just turn it off ask that the audience focus on you for a moment and give that cue that that's where the energy should be for that moment. So don't be afraid of that black screen. And if you are using, as you are presenting, you can bring in other low-tech kinds of things to the room. Things like, as we see on the slide right now, the target audience. Bring images of the target audience into the room in a more low-tech way than in electronic delivery. Show pictures of them. And bring in those stories as well. You know, if you're talking about an idea that has to do with baseball, just for example, imagine how powerful it could be if you actually are standing there with a baseball in your hand, tossing it up and down, catching it in your hand, and even roll it all the way across the boardroom table for the CEO to kind of grab a hold of and feel and touch and get into the mind frame of that baseball idea. Think about, even in that case, bringing some Cracker Jacks into the room. Engage your audience with sensory, whether it's touch, feel, sight, sound, or even smell.
Speaking of smell, we were pitching a new client in the Black Hills, and we wanted to bring in that feel of being in the Black Hills. So what we did is we brought in pine-scented plugins. We also covered the table in pine cones and had those ever so popular red cabin blankets draped on the back of each chair to really bring the group into the feeling of being in a cabin and experiencing the Black Hills in the way that it should be. Another way to bring in your target audience is via Skype, which we mentioned before. Here you can bring in that target audience and have them talk live to your group. If you're worried about the group that you're with not engaging and learning about the target audience, bring them in. This will really get your idea across and be a powerful support tool. Lastly, make a simple takeaway that condenses everything you talked about. We all know that nobody truly references those 20-page booklets that recap the slides that you went through in a presentation, so just have a one-sheeter. One takeaway that we really love are infographics. You can see it here on the screen. It's a one-sheeter that gets your point across fast, and it's very visual-based.
As you're sharing ideas with your audience, you know that eventually it's going to be their chance to give feedback. And oftentimes key leadership is there, and you need to recognize that these folks are certainly invested and they know their stuff about the industry and about the product, service, whatever it is that your idea has to do with. And so recognize that knowledge and do that by the way that you react to their feedback. You know, as a presenter, as a person who developed the idea, you may have all the answers in your head, but instead of jumping onto their comment right away with a response, kind of give their feedback a moment to breathe and take a moment, kind of hear what they're saying, show some understanding, make sure that they realize that you hear them, and then respond to that feedback. And absolutely never forget that person, while they may not have been involved on the creative or idea generation process, that their feedback could actually take your idea to the very next level and make it even better.
Or simply, like Walt Disney would say, plussing it.
Plus it.
Plus it. So the next time you're about to share an idea with stakeholders or a client, take into account some of the things that Natalie and I talked about today.
Make sure you state the objective of the project up front. Why did the team make some of the decisions they did? Be able to explain the thinking behind the idea.
And also, when it comes to technology and delivery, make sure you are comfortable with the presentation platform that you choose and that you are using it and that it's tailored to your audience. If it's a room full of decision makers, make it brief and concise. And if you're trying to sell the idea to team members or individuals who touch the idea day to day, give them the details they want and the answers to those whys.
If you're lucky enough to get a game day setting, a real presentation, remember to rehearse that presentation and also stage the room with both high-tech and low-tech staging. So thank you so much for listening to the tips Carrie and I put together today. We hope that they can help you often as you work in your environments to sell in your own ideas.
Thank you, Carrie and Natalie. If you joined us late, that was Carrie Burns and Natalie Eisenberg, both who are account executives here at Lawrence and Schiller, and sharing with us some war stories and some great tips. And of course, you know, as karma would have it, about 15 minutes into the presentation, we had a technical snafu, and our presentation shut down, and we still don't know why. But by looking at the list of those of you who are still with us, it looks like most of you hung with it, and we appreciate you doing that. And I'd like to say that this would make my top 5 list of most embarrassing presentation snafus, but it's not even close. So we'll save those for another day. We did have some good questions come in, and I'll go through those now. The first one, and we'll start with you, Carrie. How much practice is enough?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say that you can never practice enough. Like we said, rehearse, then rehearse again, and rehearse again before that big game day. Natalie, do you have any thoughts in regards to practice?
You can't practice too much, but I think in reality, you know, if you can get through it one time, get your snafus figured out, and then roll through it one more time as smoothly as possible before the actual game day, that would be optimal.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, that is a great question. Another one which is very appropriate to our experience today is how do you deal with technological hiccups? And another person asked it another way, and they said, how do you entertain a client during a technical snafu?
I actually have a good example of that. Recently we were in a meeting and we were going to present new TV concepts. So we were relying really heavily that the computer in the room was working and that the projector was working. And kind of like we experienced today, technology was not our friend. So to present these 3 new TV concepts, we were walking around the big boardroom, holding our laptop up and walking around to everybody so they could see the TV concept. So in that situation, we made light of it, and we went with it, we flowed with it, and we had fun with it.
Yeah, rolling with it is important. Another thing that I try and make sure to do is try and prepare the technology as best you can. Maybe bring in your own technology, and so maybe it's a little more reliable, you're comfortable with it. And then finally, if you're in that such situation, make sure somebody in the group that is presenting is kind of attending the technology, and that someone else is working the room, so that you're not all focused on scrambling to get the technology working and leaving the room completely kind of unattended.
Yeah.
Next question, what tactics do you use to get feedback from the audience? I
just ask. I think, you know, it's a lot of times you do a presentation and it's so much information that folks maybe just need a moment to absorb. And so, you know, give it a moment, give a little time to breathe, like we talked about a minute ago. But then, and especially if you know the people you're presenting to well, you know, you may ask them specifically, what did you think, John, about that particular point? Get the conversation rolling that way.
Yeah, that brings us back to that pause slide that Natalie went through. Sometimes people just need time to absorb all the information that they just saw and heard in the presentation. So just respect that moment and give them time to gather their thoughts, and then just directly ask what their feedback is.
Had an interesting piece of insight come in. Someone is asking if there's ever a time where you feel like perhaps you practiced too much and lost some of the energy and genuineness in the presentation.
I think that can happen. I think you just judge that case by case, and if it starts to feel that way, you know, break away and come back to it at another point.
Absolutely.
Another good question. How many presenters should be at the front of the room? How many presenters are too many?
I kind of like the rule of 3. And I don't know that I have a lot of rationale behind that, but I think about, you know, how many is too many? Well, especially if you're presenting to a small group, if you're just presenting to 2 people, I kind of like to keep the room somewhat even from presenter to presentee, and keep that balance there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You never want to overbear the room with more people than that they have in the room as well. And just make sure that everybody that's talking knows the topic that they're talking on and that they can speak to it well.
Well, thank you, Natalie and Carrie, again,
Thank
for
you.
sharing some great insight and some fun stories as well. Please join us next month for a very exciting topic, iPads and tablets, understanding the audience and exploring the marketing opportunities. These are a new tool, and they're exploding in their usage. And they are a little bit unique to any opportunity as marketers that we've had in the past. And so we'll share with you some tips on how to best take advantage of this new and quickly growing medium. Thank you again to all of you who hung with us this morning, even through the snafu. We look forward to seeing you again next month. Until then, have a great day.